Uh,
Alright, so can you tell us a little bit of what you're making right now?
okay, so I want to make a representation of the Aquaba doll. Okay, so it's a fertility doll in a can or in the traditional Ghanaian setting.
Okay.
Yes. So I'm making it in a two parts, the first part and then the second part. So I make the first part and then take it off, make the second one and then join.
Okay.
Yes.
That sounds very complicated.
Yeah. I think it's okay, let's see. It should be simple, a bit more simple than so I'm throwing the first half just like a flower vase or something like that. Yes.
Okay. And then when you join them together, do you join them together while they're wet on the wheel, or do you join them together later?
I think for the sake of today, we will join it together.
Okay.
Wet, yes.
Very cool.
So we will we will because it will be too wet, we might have to use the heat gun or something and then we score
Okay.
just to put it together.
All these
Yes.
pottery tricks that
Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't think of. It's just genius. So how long have you been throwing?
um, let's say since 2006. So let's say about 15 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
Do you? So I know some ceramic artists use the glazes after the works. Do you use them early on, or do you wait till the piece dries out?
Okay, so it depends on the kind of finishing that I want to get. Sometimes I just do it without the glaze,
Yeah.
allow it to fire bisque before I put a glaze on.
Okay.
And then sometimes I just put a glaze on it in the green state.
Okay.
Yes. Sometimes when you put the glaze on in the green state, it gives you a different texture of the glaze than when it's base fired.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. So what are you going for now? Are you just doing a tall vessel?
Yes. It's not gonna be too tall. I'm almost there with what I want to because of the size of the clay and how big I want it to be. So it's not going to be something too tall. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about your process and how you decide what you want to make and where your inspiration comes from? And
Okay. For some time now, most of my works have not been wheel thrown. It's been hand building.
oh, okay.
Yes. But if I want to be on the wheel, it's mostly something that is going to be functional. Yes, like a vase or like a bowl or like a plate or something like that. But if I want to make a sculpture piece like today on a wheel, it depends on the idea, the idea that comes, yeah, or the concept of the work, or an instance like this. It will be more simple, more faster to make the sculpture piece on the wheel than to build
Okay.
or than to hand build. Yes.
So you said you've been throwing for or doing pottery for about 15 years. Did you start on the wheel or did you start with hand building?
I started with hand building.
Okay.
Yes. Actually, being on the wheel was getting to, I think it was the latter part of 2006. Yes, when I started um, undergrad. But then I would say at that time I couldn't have thrown this
Right.
because I would say I was like a beginner,
Yeah.
a very very beginner. So
So there's a lot of steps involved. Which part of the process is the most therapeutic?
okay, I think I think it's this. Um, I think it, I think all of them.
Okay.
It's be very difficult for me to pinpoint which of them because each step comes with its own set of thinking or what it does to the mind. And I feel like from start to finish, you need some level of patience that runs through. And then they all play with their mind in different ways. So it'll be very difficult to say one is more therapeutic than the other.
Okay.
Yes.
So you said this was a traditional vessel, is that right?
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit more about that and um, what your connection to that form is?
Okay, so back home we've been using, or I lived with a family that used this traditional vessel to store water. So it was like our refrigerator those days, and it has um, yeah, mostly with this big belly that you keep the water in, and then it's put in a special place in the room that makes it cool, and then you have a cup on it. You, it comes with a lid, then you have a special cup on it, and then mostly that is where you you give water for your visitors when you get some. So they come in different sizes, and then that's what we were used to. And so almost all our forms start with the traditional forms, especially I would say for myself because um, the shapes are somehow very unique, and then the moment you see them, you can identify with them. So I grew up knowing this shape, and so it's kind of unconsciously you see it in anything that, or it becomes evident in everything that I throw, especially if I'm not throwing like a flat piece. Yes.
You just keep coming back to that
Yes.
shape.
Okay, so this is going to be like the body of the doll. This will be the neck. So you're going to throw the head separately, and then we get a torch or something like that, and then put it on. Yes.
That's pottery magic.
Yes. Sometimes it's fun when you feel like you don't have so much luxury of time to allow the work to sit and then come back again. And I say it's fun because you sometimes get to encounter some accidents that becomes very fortunate accidents
Yeah.
that makes the works very beautiful. It gives you most of the times get some textures or some effects that cannot be intentionally executed as perfectly as it's an accident.
Do those accidents, happy accidents, usually happen during glazing, or is it usually during building for you?
Um, okay, for now, I think I like it with building and glazing because some of the accidents in glazes becomes very scary because I don't think you'll be happy to have your glaze run off the work and onto your 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 kiln
Right.
bat or slate, like, yeah. So I enjoy it in the building stage, and then currently I am more I enjoy cracks more than anything now.
That's great.
Yeah. Okay, so the neck of the doll, it has we call it round neck, or it's like a folded neck. That is very peculiar, or gives the doll that unique Akan or Ghanaian feature. So that is what I'm going to do. Okay, and then one thing also is some of the because I'm rushing through this, or I want this done, everything done on the wheel.
Right.
Some of the effects are going to be very quite difficult or challenging to get, because this that I'm doing under normal circumstance, I will do it when the work is leather hard that I can trim to get these effects out. But I can still do it here with some level of patience.
So normally you would mark those lines and then wait for the clay to dry a little bit before you trimmed it into
Yes.
the forms that you're making
Yeah.
now.
That is when you don't want to go through the hassle of trying to clean back and forth. Yes.
Right.
Okay. So apart from the neck, on the waist side, you have the bead around the waist, and then some cloth, that is the kente cloth, covering the back and front. Yes. So we create we come to this part, and then this is going to be my waistline for the figure. Like, I decide, somebody can, depending on how the person wants to design it, can bring it a bit up or a bit lower. So I decide for it to be somewhere around here.
I see you're making your marks in
Mm-hmm.
threes. Is that always the same, or is this a choice that changes?
Sorry, come again.
It seems like you're making all of the lines in threes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a traditional way to do it,
Okay.
or is this something that you're deciding
It's
as you make it?
some the number of the line. Some of the lines, the number depends on the your idea or thinking behind, because we have meanings for each of the numbers, and mostly the three as a number is more connotation, or mostly connotes love.
Oh,
Yes. For so if you give somebody a gift that is in three, it's like you are expressing your everlasting love for the person.
nice.
Yes.
So if you were making this for somebody you didn't like, you would choose a different number.
Yes, and then most of the times, I don't think we mostly want to give gifts to our, our enemies or people we
Fair,
don't like.
fair, yeah.
Yes, but to a typical Akan, there is a certain number that you give as a gift, and then the meaning, if the person understands the meaning, will not accept it.
Ah,
Yes, especially if the person is somebody who takes things so personal. Okay, so we are mostly done here for the first part. Mm,
so other than the neck and waistlines,
mhm.
are are there other elements that you would typically carve into this, or is this
Okay, so typically it's not going to be all carving.
okay?
Sometimes it could be some attachment that you add, like a necklace.
Ah,
Yes. Or this, for instance, I could choose to make it that's the beads. So I could choose to add it as attachment instead of carving on it. Yes. So it could be something like this, like it'd be like this.
okay.
It's attachment, and then it can go around as the bead around the waist.
So even
Yes.
though it's a thrown piece, there is a lot of hand building elements to
Yes.
this. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so this is the bead around the waist. So I can choose to say this is the frontal view of the figure, that is the back. So I do this as a representation of the cloth that is covering, like an um so that you don't present the figure as a naked body. Yes. So because it's still wet, I have to be a little more gentle so that I don't collapse it. Or I can also choose to do this to add a bit more of carving or hand building to it. Can make can make a slab, and then
And that would be like the clothing for
yes,
the doll.
yes. So one here,
And that's something that you could add texture to, or some more like
yes.
those
So
different experimentations like you were
yes,
talking about before.
yeah. So let's say right now, I think I'll go for this, and so I'll cover the first marks that the initial marks that I made.
Great. And we're just about at time. Japet
Okay.
will be inside the Contemporary in about 15 minutes as part of a panel. He'll be speaking about his work at length with curator Michael Dika. So those of you that are watching us on the live stream, you can continue tuning back in about 15 minutes. And then he will be back out here to finish this form and teach us some more about his work about a little bit after 7.
Great. Where's my no problem. Okay. And why are there? Why are they also take control churches? Very nice. Not really. Very impressive. But that's it.
research on studying people in Marx and studying how the research on studying people in Marx and studying
the maps were drawn with roads where resources were gotten from and not necessarily where people were living or where people could get access in places. So that idea of, so it was called all that glitters resources across the country, like timber, gold, bauxite, just name it. So these things and how the railway or, the cholesterol in terms of extraction produce this about a 15-foot installation. And the colors that you do not apply any color. These are, I use like things, solutions as seawater, like I said, as vinegar, as salt, things that are almost tangible, things that are, peculiar to touch, these colors. So around these kind of textural creation and map and digging into trade and history and of value and materiality. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Japteth Global, I know it's like clay as your material, and you normally reference your work as a diary and how you talk about your work as in a way of talking about your personal story. You want to elaborate a little on that for me?
Hello everyone, my name is Japteth and I'm also a Ghanaian. I'm in my final year in Illinois State University. I would say clay has been part of me since childhood. So I've lived in mud house with my family before, helped them build with mud house before. So after high school, when I studied ceramics, it felt like I've really found my root, or really found my identity, or something that I can play with. So when I got here, it felt like that was the chance for me to really reflect and express some of the things that I'm feeling as a father, or as a husband who is separated from the family. So I started expressing or reflecting on some of the things that ties me back home, because it was the first time I had left my family for that long time, to leave them for more than a month. I've never been away from them for more than a month, so it was like I had to find a way, like as Michael said, to document or make my work like the diary, or my diary, something to talk about, to reflect on some of the memories that will help me not feel so homesick. Something like a sort of a self-care approach to my own mental health. So, thank you.
Are you saying that in regards to you being a new space where it's very different culturally and you not being able to relate to, expectations and...
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
I'm going to move on to ask Yao. I know you introduced pennies in your work.
Yes.
But you initially started with pesos, which is the Ghanaian currency.
Yeah.
How do you actually have the pennies in your work now? How do you like pennies in your work, not still using the Ghanaian? I mean, you do use the Ghanaian pesos, but why the pennies now?
Thanks, Mike. Perhaps like it's almost an obvious choice because shipping coins was heavy, but I actually moved to New York. Yes, it is. No, but I moved to New York to broaden my scope. I was more curious into a much global economic and trade history. But also, for MFA, I was here to try out new things, almost like an unlearning process. And then I realized, the penny wasn't so different from, because it's also symbolically relevant, but it doesn't afford anything or use, for anything. So that became something that also drew me back to the question of what value
actually is. This thing that you see here is it's a postcard that I did, and I was going around some spaces in New York, like train stations, Wall Street, Times Square, Central Park, like places that were very specific, an activity, be trade, and I was asking people what they would do for a penny. Deal at the time, 2019, it came because we had just introduced or bumped up the minimum wage to $15, and I was questioning who was getting less or who was getting that $15. Know what it meant to be rewarded by your F people, and I'll give them back a penny as a
reward.
Yes.
Okay.
So I paid $100 to them, and I collected. Yes, but then the question of actually people were taking it because then it became an art piece. It became a transaction that was different from what they were laboring for. Because just imagine at Wall Street, where people are making millions in seconds, for somebody to stop for a minute or two to answer a postcard from a stranger was like a whole new, idea of value being created. And that was what I was going for, and collected a few of them.
Just a follow-up question. I remember you giving a little reference to the penny being the only currency with Abraham Lincoln or something.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you elaborate more on that for me, please?
Yes. Well, my work, I tend to base it off on intense research, because I think there's that symbol that almost, and pretty much you see in the subsequent works, that the works tends to be very beautiful. So you almost immediately draw away from any kind of historical research or importance to the work, and then it becomes, oh, these are just objects made of money. So learning that, oh, Abraham Lincoln is, aside the old Indian face, it's Lincoln that's all been used, as a representation of on this currency. It became relevant as to what Lincoln stands for and what it means for the emancipation, and especially because I'm Ghanaian, slavery and slave trade. It became a very, very important material to me, because then I had moved through over the same kind of Atlantic Ocean, to the same places that my ancestors were brought to, and this was the object of that connoted that memory. So it was like, oh, now I can talk about my history here, even though I'm out of Ghana, but this is where I'm actually going to dance here. So it made it even more relevant for me to start using this. And yes, and I see you bring this. So in 2020, during around June-ish, no, maybe May-ish, I had found a 1920 penny. And I was just researching about what happened in 1920, and then I realized Piscavie made the Pan-African flag, and my favorite artist, David Hammonds, one of my most favorite artists, had done a replica, but he made an advancement by turning it into the American flag, to question the bodies and how the treatment of freedom of Black people here in 1980. So in 2020, when we were on streets in New York, kind of still protesting for Black Lives Matter, it's like, actually, this is something that happened. I mean, it's been happening for centuries and centuries, and over 100 years, we're still battling with this. So then, what Lincoln stood for, what the penny stood for, what the emancipation stood for, now, okay, I have to do like a century-piece with coins that were dating as far back as 1920 to 2020 for this particular work. And I feel so dear, and I'm quite honored to have the opportunity or even the privilege to have made this piece. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Just a quick, I think I can take questions from the audience. Like, you can actually interject if you have like any questions. It's totally welcome. I'll just go on to ask Japteth about how you came about with weaving kente patterns on your ceramic pieces, and how that's like very relevant to your ceramic pieces. How do you?
Okay, so like I said, I I started with, can you go back? Okay. So when I came, I felt like I was like a drop of water or something being dropped into the ocean, because it was the first time moving out of Ghana, far away out of Ghana. So I felt the struggle within me, something like there's this eagerness to, I need to sprout out of that coil that is my new environment, something that I felt it's necessary for me to achieve why I came, because it's a very big sacrifice, a huge sacrifice for me, myself, and my family, just to leave them and come here and then still be called because I am just a drop in a huge ocean or something like that. So this work in particular speaks to my struggles as I came here in 2019, trying to get to know of my new environment, get to navigate through the new experiences that are ahead of me. And then as the year progressed, a bit comfortable, I thought of, I still need to, I found this this post about the Adinkra, the kente cloth itself. I felt it was more being appropriated than appreciated, because I saw a picture of some congressmen or something like that, house, wearing having the kente on, and then I felt the kente cloth is being dragged a little more into politics. And so in a way, it's kind of, though I felt like they are showing some solidarity or something like that, but I felt the political angle that the kente cloth is being dragged into, which in a way sort of depreciates its meaning, because the cloth is a very highly revered cloth back home in Ghana, and it has nothing to do with politics. It's something that brings everyone together. So I felt like moving into in my work, and then with that I'll be able to give more meaning to the work, to the cloth, and help people to rather appreciate the cloth than in it.
Would you say way of you trying to find your cultural identity in a new environment where you feel the kente cloth is a significant like symbol for you in an environment where you feel like nothing really?
Yes, I think you're right, because and I don't think this is peculiar to myself alone. Move to a new environment, you try to find something that you can relate very comfortable with. Even though you're trying to learn about your new environment, you still need something that will help you, or that will still remind you of where you're coming from. So I would say yes to your question, and then say that it's, like I said earlier, it's something that helped me to really understand who I am in the new environment. That it doesn't matter how long I will stay, I will still have that identity, even if I am within the new environment. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting, Japteth. Thank you very much. Yeah, do you mind elaborating or talking a little about this piece? I think you titled it Other Glitters, or which one is it?
No, this is In Between Escapes.
Yeah, In Between. Yeah, In Between Escapes. Yeah.
Well, thanks. I'll go back a little bit to. So, yes. so I did this project in 2019, as I said, and during that time, just imagine a stranger, a complete stranger coming to you, and then I had my backpack with me, and I'll dig my hands, at my back, and to take out the postcards. And now here's the case that just a complete stranger, regardless of where you are, digging his hand at the back and pulling out whatever that was. But to me, because where I'm from, we do not have these kind of security or breaches, and there was no intention for anybody digging his hand to it back, whatever. Like, people will not immediately go to harm. But during the project, I realized that a lot of people will start will really yes. So,
Yeah.
but I didn't understand. I wasn't getting this, and then I showed this. It was a personal project. It had nothing to do with a school project. So I showed this at school, and then one of my professors were like, "So who did you go to with this? Like, who were you with?" I was like, "I was alone," and she freaked out. Yes, because she was like, "Do you know how dangerous this could be?" Because I was doing it, even to policemen. But I honestly had no idea. But then it brought to me what it means to be in spaces and how you need to be careful, to be aware of yourself in spaces. And at some point, I was in my studio, and usually when I'm in the studio, I turn off my phone and I switch it back on, and there's so many messages. And people were asking if I was safe, if I'm, and I didn't understand. But then I realized, actually the ICE was, they were going around, trying to arrest illegal immigrants, and even people. I have half my family are Americans, born and raised here, and I am Ghanaian. But even though I have a legal permit to be here, people saw me to be an outsider, and they were concerned about, who I am,
deported,
yes,
yeah.
and all of that. And also, the student visa that I have has so many restrictions. You need permissions and to be granted for you to go out of the country, come into the country, how much you can make, how long you can work. So all these things felt like, even though I was coming here to just express myself much broader, there were so many restrictions to me as an outsider. So I made this this piece that almost reflected fences, that almost reflected, the in-between space of being outside. That could be a place of danger, or being in between a fence, that could also be a space of danger or safety. Because at the time, and you can see I had used, for the first time, I've introduced the emergency blankets, and I could see images and footages of how these immigrants were being treated, how they were being separated, and how the value on body were being evaluated based on whether you are American or not, or how you enter a country. So I made this this piece based off that feeling and that moment, which was, it was happening at the borders, and now we were building walls. Especially that was the time that the championing of building the wall around the borders of America were being. So the idea of walling and who is safe behind and who is safe within, or that play of was very interesting to me. That's why I did this piece.
Did you still use the same materials, like still pennies and coins, or was just...
Yes, I still use them, and you see even more. And even now, considering the Haitian treatment, it still comes back to that relevance of safety and who is and who belongs. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Japteth, I have a question for you. I know you speak very dearly of fabrics and materials, and I think you reference a lot about the Kente fabric and how fabrics and yarns and all of these materials speak to intimacy of personal adornment, how people adorn that, and I think you try to reference that on your pieces. Do you mind talking a little about how you translate, adorn like fabrics, like how they have like this intimacy to the body, and how you try to convey that onto the clay? Like, is there...
Thank you. I think I felt like me working, trying to replicate the cloth in clay. I find that intimacy that you have with your cloth, that bond that you have with your cloth, I get it from the clay, because for some time now, working with clay has shown me, or I've learned to be very intimate with the clay, because whether you like it or yes, you need you need to love the material that you're working with.
Yeah.
And clay is such a material that it tests your patience. It tests it to the very core. Like this work, for instance, when I started, like my professors, they were all happy. It's actually almost 7 feet by 30 inches. So when I started this work, I had to babysit the work in the kiln for almost a whole night, like from morning to the next morning. And it's like I couldn't even sleep. So it's like you having this your little child. The child needs all the tender care that you have to give. So I felt like I developed so much bond with the clay and with the work that the clay is going to come out as. So when I was done with this work, stacked everything together, then my professor, after a review, he called me and told me he has a confession to make. So not knowing, when we were talking, discussing, he was excited about the whole idea of making the work. He saw me make the work. He never believed the work could survive. So it's like, yes, there's that intimacy with the clay, and no matter what, you develop it unconsciously, and then when you come to embrace and accept it, it feels so good to work, and then it gives you this sort of a safe haven somewhere.
Yeah.
You can, yeah. And so I felt like it even goes beyond it. Okay, definitely intimacy is sort of a bit spiritual, because you need to have that bond, and you don't know where that bond comes from. It comes naturally and then spiritually. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I remember when I visited your studio, Yao, you spoke a little bit about introducing industrial materials. Are you still working with that, and how do you juxtapose the industrial materials with the pennies, and how do you actually think of is it something you're exploring temporarily, or is it something you're looking to do it for the long term with regards to your work? And how does those materials find their way into your works now?
Well, thanks, Mike. I mean, for a long time, I was exploring just the pesos because it was just research heavy, it was technically heavy, and it felt so much fun to be developing textures and colors from it. But I felt I didn't want to be repetitive and almost like a craft because there was so much to it. So this work I actually was almost trying to, or attempting to deconstruct symbols or symbolisms like the American flag and what they means, because my work in itself is just an attempt to understand what symbols actually stand for, what they mean, you know, especially at the times that there were, and especially in 2019, or even getting to the end of the elections where America was being reinterpreted. What America means were being interpreted by political stance and all of that. But then, because I had come to New York, the center of capitalism and the center of industrialization, or perhaps like commerce, I was faced with like train stations, like sewer covers, steel, and what, you know, magnanimous and the strength that steel commanded. Something robust and something that almost felt like the American economy or the American governance, which is almost indestructible. And I found steel to be a representation of such structures or such systems. So I started also exploring the idea of steel. And that's some of the works that you have seen, and possibly those will be some of the works that you see in the show. So you better come see it, please. But so this work, almost a week or two before my thesis show, that's exactly when COVID hit. So we were like one night in the studio, working, and then they were like, oh, your thesis show, and I was going to go first. So what happens at Pratt is we are scheduled to go in weeks after weeks, and I was supposed to go to the first week, and mine, an email said the show is being canceled. I could deal with it because like the world is dealing with something that we all didn't know about, and a day after it's like, oh, you have to pack up your stuff. So I couldn't finish the actual central piece that I was going to show for my thesis show. And I had these panels. Now, fast forward, they are aluminum composite panels, the panels that are clad in buildings and infrastructure. But when I had my studio after school, Michael, I couldn't find them. There were no transportations to bring or to ship and all of that. So I began to scrape off the work that I didn't finish for my thesis show to make another piece. So in that act of taking down something that has been built, and especially money, like actually chiseling them out, and the gray areas that you see were actually all covered with some other pennies, but I was chiseling them out. And it was 2020 at the time, but it felt like, and the work I was using, the coins from as far back as 1921, but I had a feeling that, this means something. This act of almost undoing economy or undoing a process meant something. And then the history of Tulsa came to mind. I was like, oh, actually, this feels like that. The Greenwood Black Wall Street, the idea of the Black, kind of community building an economy specifically for the Black community, and being torn down by such vicious encounter, it felt like what I was doing to the work. And so I had done some research, and I contacted the Library of Congress for maps on Greenwood, and they sent me the file, service maps from 1914 to up to like 1964 something. And so I layered these maps onto this 20-foot panel, and I was building the new layers with steel and then with new pennies, attaching them and new treatments as a commemoration of what also happened, 100 years ago and what it means. And also, I finished this work earlier this year, but then it was around the time that the Capitol was being stormed. And the idea of what happened to Tulsa being people also protesting against, a case in court, and then the whole city being burned. Of course, there was a lot of politics around that, and also having this bunch of people storm the Capitol with such freedom and such entitlement without harm or, pain. It was like, I was just actually juxtaposing those two histories, and either celebrating or questioning what it means for such a protected and such bodies to be that protected or ignored or celebrated. So I made this space, and this is going to be also the central piece of my solo show in London in November, hopefully. Well, not hopefully, but also in November. So, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's very, that's a lot of details for the steel and the histories behind. Right, yeah. I remember Japteth speaking to you one time. I know you traveled to Ghana recently, and you mentioned that you feel like a stranger in both places. After being here for almost 2 or 3 years, going to Ghana, you feel like a stranger, and then coming back to the US, you also feel like a stranger. Do you mind elaborating more on that or talking about that in regards to this piece that you made? Oh, my bad. Go back. Yeah, right. Do you mind talking to that in regards to this piece?
Okay, so Um, Thanks to my professors, they've been amazing. They have held me down up to this time until I decided to let my work also speak a bit more about how I feel. So I went home after being here after about 20 months, almost 2 years, and when I was coming, my first son, he was quite grown to understand that I was leaving him, and then the second one came in my absence, and then we always have fun behind the screen, and then I decided to go home very happy. I thought I was geared up. They were also geared up, waiting for me. And then this little guy saw me and then cried his head off. Like, so what I forgot was he was so little that he cannot comprehend the difference between the guy on the screen and then seeing him in person. So within the first week, I was like a stranger. I felt like I didn't know them. I didn't know the two boys. I didn't know my wife. I didn't know anything about home, because I felt like there were some of the things that I do for the kids that when the mother does it, they find it more appreciative than I would do it. And then there's the little one who also, if I give him something, he will take it, thanks me, and then just move away. He wouldn't want to come close to me. So it went on. I spent like more than 3 months at home, and then we became good friends. He wouldn't allow me an inch to go anywhere without him. And then fast forward, I had to come back. So I came back about a month ago, and I still felt like I came in 2019. Like I feel like I have come to a new environment, because it's like when I went home, I tried to forget about everything here and then just try to be with my family. And then the time came, I have to come, and here I am all alone, always go home after work to an empty house. So I felt like right now I'm in the middle of
Two spaces?
two worlds. Like I feel like now I have a dual identity. I have a transnational identity. So how do I manage the two? Because there are forces pulling me from home, and then there's some also here that I need to get both done equally. And so that brought about this work where I have my American side pulling me, or pulling half of me, and then my Ghanaian side also pulling half of me. And then so right now I still feel I need to find a balance between the two. How do I balance family home, and then how do I balance studies here? Because mind you, I have to, since 2019, I have never slept before 12 a.m. Sometimes I have to sleep around 2, 3 a.m. because of the time difference. I have to try to keep up with the family, so I had to make sure I wake them up in the morning, make sure they say goodbye to me before they go to school, before I also go to sleep. And by that time, it will be about 2 a.m. over here. So how do I sleep at 3, wake up and go to class, which is at 9 or 8, and then still keep up, get the reason why I came here done, and also make sure all the sacrifices I'm making and the family are making becomes worth a while. So, yes.
So I think in a way you try to convey your emotions through your pieces, and then your material become your
Yeah.
means of intimacy.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes I feel like there are a lot of things that I cannot tell people because they also have their own problems. They also have their own families. They have their issues that they are living with. So some of the things that I want to say that I cannot say, I make the work.
Clay, yeah.
Yes.
So then
say for
you
me.
convey your emotions through your
Yes,
hands into
through-
the clay.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's very interesting. That's something I find very fascinating with your story and how you try to talk about your emotions and express them through your hands onto the clay, and still find a way to have these pieces very beautiful and colorful in a very playful yet fun way. It's something I find very intriguing. Yeah, I have a question for you. I remember you saying something about you having to go to Ghana
Right.
to get a pesos, and then at the border of Ghana it becomes like money laundering, like a whole. I'm kind of like interested in that story in relation to your work.
Oh my, I mean, of course, like I said, it's always heavy to bring coins, and since we do not spend pesos here, I would have to go back and bring them. But I only started actually going back for them specifically for a project that I'm working on. That's, like I said, my show is really tracing histories from Ghana to the US and back to London. So it made sense for me to incorporate currencies of value from these places. And I had to actually, I think about a month ago, I had to go home for about a day, less than 2 days, just grab coins and come because I was tight on time to work on things. But the idea of bringing, for instance, like taking 1,000 pieces of pennies across borders, you are always questioned at the JFK. I mean, I'll say this because I'm from New York. You are always questioned at JFK because it makes sense. There is value in the currency here. But as soon as it gets to wherever I'm taking it, then it's nothing really. When I'm bringing pesos in Ghana, it's like complete chaos. You know, it's so much questions, so many questions. To get them from the banks is already a question. But then also to travel with them is also a big question because what are you going to use it for? We don't know. It seemed like it's copper, but I mean, little they know it's plated, perhaps steel or some cheap metal. But because it seemed like valuable in Ghana, there are like a lot of trouble. I'm always the last person to get on the plane, which I'm used to now. but then when I get to JFK, it's nothing. They don't really care because it's just mere objects to them. So that idea of a switch between a few hours between places, one object becomes so protected and valuable. And then in this place, really, if I give you like this room full of pesos, it's just beautiful objects, or I mean, loads technically. But then in the same way, if I took the pennies to Ghana, unlike the dollar that you can exchange for value or even pay somebody with, the pennies are worthless. So that play of what value is and what, how value is even created or done, it's like, it was really, really interesting to me, yeah.
Yeah, I find that very interesting. As I think I have a few coins from Ghana as well, and
Yeah, I'll take it.
yeah, and no, I mean it's I think the 20 pesos, so
No,
probably
no.
you wouldn't need that.
No, I
Yeah,
don't need that.
yeah, but I think it's something that I find very interesting. But I think with the pennies, it makes a lot of sense. But when you have like a dollar in Ghana, it's
Yes.
something that you can
Yeah.
exchange. Yeah, totally. So with Japteth, I'm kind of like intrigued with your process, particularly with the 7 feet piece. Do you have like a particular process as to how you make your pieces? Is it very meditative? Is it very planned out? Is it, is it something you kind of like planned out ahead of time, or it's like very intuitive, or you go
Okay.
directly?
I think I've gotten to a point where I just want to have fun. Like, just want to play around. other materials apart from our side clay. So with the 7-foot piece, I have almost everything. I have wood in it, I have plaster in it, I have epoxy in it, I have hot glue in it, I have cloth in it, I have glazes and then clay. So right now I would say I don't really know what my media apart from clay is, because I feel like I'm having fun. So anything that can go with the clay, it's welcome.
Is it a way of saying you're like liberating yourself from all like this emotional, in between spaces, and you want to just have fun with materials in a way that make meaning to you, but you're not able to say them?
Yeah, so I felt like with the clay, just using clay all along up to somewhere last year, felt like living in Ghana all my life without moving anywhere outside the family. So right now, I'm like out of the box. I need to accept that challenge of not being in my comfort zone with my family, to embrace the other things, like you said, to help with my emotions, because I felt like I know the clay has taught me so much that I need to learn other things from other media.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So it's like a journey of discovery with other
Yes.
media. Okay.
Yes. So
okay.
right now it's like working in clay or working in ceramics, working in sculpture, working in painting. So I am now on an adventure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's more like, as in acclimatizing to your new environment.
Yes.
And using the materials as a means of using the materials to playfully do that.
Yes.
So
and the interesting part or aspect to me is even with the painting, I kind of execute or do the paintings in a more sculptural way. So it's not like having to have a very very detailed painted image or something like that. So you see the paint, it's painting all right, but it's sort of a bit more sculptural than being a flat piece. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'll also want to know, I mean, I know you mentioned you actually try to use seawater to actually oxidize your materials. Right. Is there any other, like, how do you get the colors? Because I realize every color is different.
Yes.
So then if you're using the same, liquid or the same material, how do you work around getting different colors or different textures on your material, which is the pennies or the coins?
Thanks for that. I'll go back to one of the works so you get a fair sense of. Okay, let's go back. If you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. So the coastal part of Ghana is, the south part, which is the coastal, is where I had first encountered the textures, because it came in contact with sea, and Ghana in itself is structured economically along the region. So the coast has a lot of fishing activities, salt mining, things like that. The mid-central has like farming activities, gold minings, and the north, which also has, because it's much more hotter. So there is that element of specific economic activities going on. So the idea of exchange, even tangibly, of money, it's also different. People get to touch money based off what trade they are in or what objects they are using. So I based off here, I was using things that reflected these areas in terms of like using seawater, like I said, or vinegar, or like salt, or things that were almost reflecting the economic activities that were going around. Because I thought we all touch money because of what, and it's affected based off what we had touched earlier. It change depending on which area it is. The pennies that are in Texas would definitely differently. And if so, let's say the Statue of Liberty, if it was in Texas, it would definitely different patina. But because of the OC, so these things were things that I go to like specific. I do not use any pre-made patinas to get the textures. It's basically try and error and use things that I would restrict to share, but nothing superficial, nothing dangerous. It could be like, so common things to generate these things, and it reflects our daily lives, our daily activities of things that we use, things that we touch almost every day.
I'm also like very curious as to these pieces. And if you have like pennies, I'm assuming there's like thousands of, is this pennies?
Yeah, this is pesos, but this
is silver. Okay, so how do you have like this in this fabric form? I'm curious. Is it attached to a fabric? Is the pieces together?
It was glued. It was glued to it and pieces. So, and it was in an outdoor space during an art. And unfortunately, it was the area that this work was at was a very unimpoverished, one of the poorest neighborhoods in. So people after this gigantic, they came to take it out. And the work, spoiler alert, it's like maybe 10% of the pesos are left on it, and it's always so that.
So I'm assuming if they accumulate like 1,000 of this will probably be value to them in a way.
Presumably, but because it's money, it's like pesos. If you have like a jar of pesos, it's almost like it's more work to go change it than to have it sit there as a baby object.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Is it like an intentional specific location for the installation? Did you assume or actually know that was going to happen? You were just like, oh, what happens if I in a specific location? Was it something you thought of?
Like I said, it's a festival, and it's almost like a canvas. Works are outdoor. And I had tried any installation outside, but I had this slave female wall as my site. Well, it will be quite difficult for people coming to a festival to stop to really, kind of digest works. So I needed to produce something that is immediately iconic, immediately identifiable. So I made a flag, and it drove people to stop. And work was actually the flag. A few years later, after watching videos of the interactions, and even seeing the work change, I realized, actually the actual work was that interaction and people picking it and people's reaction to the installation. So I had no idea what will happen to it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we have a few minutes. I'm willing to take questions from the audience. If anyone has any question, I'm free to. All right. Do you mind?
Do you seal your works, or does it change over time?
Well, initially that's the problem that I had. I was having so much fun. I thought the work would stay forever, but then some of it, like I said, some of the early didn't. It grew, and the places that work ended, in collections. They love the fact that they, but also more advanced, more refined seals for now.
Okay. All right.
Anyone else?
So I had a question of figures. So when you were talking to that had the, the flags, the representation, of you in a sense, and how you felt going from Ghana and then, coming back to the States, with the three figures, are those, kind of representing, are those also representing in a sense someone? They remind me of like totems.
Okay, so I made that giant piece, and I called it my diary, in the sense of I had so much on the work, and I was trying to gather all the things that I've experienced so far. So I call it my diary because it has so much, and that work I made that work before going back home. So it was like I was kind of summarizing the experiences before I left. And yeah. Does that answer your question? Okay. What? Okay, so they are asking if it is a totem. I just felt like I was making myself, sort of. So, yes, I wasn't thinking of any animal. I wasn't thinking of any other object apart from myself, because I felt like I'm trying to put out what was in me, or make the work represent what I want to put across. Yeah.
If there is any other question, we have, I think, 1 more minute. If not, then I'll say thank you very much to everyone, and I look forward to seeing you in November 4th for the opening of the show. It's really going to be interesting, and I have like this wonderful artists showing their works, talking about their personal experiences, talking about their idea of migration, their idea of labor, their idea of, personal experiences in different media. So we have like painting, we have photography, we have sculptures, and all of these artists are from different parts of the US, and you want to be able to experience the African diaspora story in one space that will transform your life. So, so please make it a point to come to University of Delaware on 4th November to experience the African diaspora story, with the exhibition becoming the medium to actually relay these stories in a very interesting way. Thank you very much.
I just want to say thank you to all of you for really fascinating, inspiring, and we will absolutely be there. It's just a little taste, and I can't wait to see it in person. You know, your stories are really rich, and it's really remarkable, Michael, that you've put together such an amazing group of artists that are really teaching us a lot about that experience that you're all sharing in very different ways. So thank you for that. Look forward to seeing you on November 4th. I hope all of you virtually and here in person. I did want to mention that we do have some of the artists that will be here on site to teach, and so that's here at the Delaware Contemporary starting on October 16th. It's 4 weekend workshops, and they're from 10 to 4, I believe. And can you imagine having some time to really get to work with these artists? It's a really rare and wonderful opportunity, so please check out our website for more information about that. It's going to be fantastic, and thank you for putting that together. Thank you for being here. I want to thank the Delaware Division of the Arts for supporting this program and our organization, as well as the Laffey McHugh Foundation. And I hope to see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I use this. There's it's a modeling tool, or you can call it a modeling tool, a shaping tool, or anything, or more or less you can use it like your knife as you are on the wheel for
You guys can come around
trimming
here
and
if you want to. It's
shaping.
okay. So the next step, you're going to put that head on the body
Yes.
that you threw before.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So Japhet was sharing that this is a traditional form that comes from Ghana, which is where he is from, and he threw this earlier, which is the body of the doll, and now the head is what he's throwing currently, and he is going to somehow, with some sort of pottery magic, connect them together.
And what are the things here?
Okay, so it's like this is the body, and you don't want to leave it naked.
Ah, okay.
Yes. So you have a piece of draped cloth.
Gotcha.
Yes, covering the front and the back.
Gotcha.
Yeah, to in order to make it not naked. So I wish I had a torch.
Oh, yes, to warm it.
Yes, to warm it,
Tell me,
but
remember when Mark used his hair dryer?
or hair dryer or something.
Yeah,
and
hair
all the
dryer.
things before he took them off? He's saying he would do it with a torch. But
If you can get some, if you don't, you can just try to move on without the torch. Yeah.
So will this be particularly challenging, not only because this is wet, but because that one is much drier? They're not the same density
Yes.
right now.
And then if it's either I leave this for a while
Uh-huh.
or I torch it so that this will not be distorted.
Right.
Yes. But let's see if we can
Let's
work
see what
some
happens. Yeah.
some magic. Yes.
So to finish the head, will you in your personal work you often include mixed media and other elements? Would you put on any sort of hair or head dressing or anything like that?
Yes. It's some I wouldn't put in or I wouldn't put on hair or human hair or artificial hair or whatever. But I would have definitely used something that is not clay.
Hmm.
Yes.
So perhaps some twine or rope
Yes.
or
Yes.
fabric of some kind.
Yes.
In the panel, you were discussing, how things are planned out and how your work kind of represents a diary of some sort. Is there ever a point where you're on the wheel and you just let the movements take over, a little less on the planning side, but more on whatever the wheel in my hands create, you let that be
Yes.
the art?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, there could be a point where I'm throwing like a plate or a flat piece, and then as I try to, I could decide maybe I want to close it up or something like that, but the wheel or the speed could go overboard or out of hand, and then the flanges go very wide. So accidentally, the wheel in the way just gives me a new form or a new shape, and
Okay.
then I just go with it.
Yeah.
Yes. So now we are going to give the head a little distortion,
Okay.
and so I press the sides just to make it a little flat. Okay. So now we have something like that. Okay.
How do you typically put the face on it? Do you add the facial features, or is it carved in, or do you do it a different way?
You mean how do I
The
put
face of the
this?
doll, like the features of like a nose and eyes,
Oh,
and
okay,
yeah.
okay, okay. So I can after okay, let's say after putting this on, let me see if I can score to make it a little more start.
So now you're scoring the clay so that it'll stick.
Yes, I'm scoring so that it will stick. So scoring, it's like it opens up the surface area of the clay, and then so I score this and score that, and now technically it becomes like a ball and a socket.
Mm-hmm.
So I open up the surface of this, the surface of that. So when I put them together, I get something like something interlocking. So the
Mm-hmm.
interlocking now it's stuck. So I add some slip, which is like my glue, and then because this is very wet, it might sag when I put it on. But
Right.
let's see how it goes.
Yeah, we can see all the water dripping out of it too. That
Yes.
I'm sure makes it much more challenging.
Yeah. So I'm only hoping it can stay for a while before it hardens. Okay. So if we have a bit of time, I can round up this side or this surface when it hardens for a while. So then I can just decide to leave it like this or give it the facial features.
Ah,
Yes. And so let's see. Let's see this. I hope it doesn't fall because it's really wet.
yeah.
Yes.
This might end up being another one of those accidents that you find
Yeah.
something new out of, huh?
But I hope it will be a nice or how do I call it? Like a nice accident or something like that.
Yeah. Now, are these quite difficult to fire? It's a hollow form that you've just enclosed.
No.
Does that create any kind of issue when you put it in the kiln?
So the only issue that or the only thing that will happen like this is when I don't create any hole anywhere.
Ah,
Okay. So if it is yes, it traps air, and then the air that is trapped trying to find a place or a space out will force the clay to explode in the kiln.
right.
Yes. So most of the times you just have to because this is hollow. I can create the hole somewhere at the bottom of this like this, or I can create it somewhere that cannot be visibly seen at a
Okay.
glance or something. Yes. Or I can even create the hole under this covering or the cloth that I yes. Okay, so let's say I want to give it an eye and a nose or something.
Now, you said that this is a traditional fertility vase and or form. Do you ever incorporate this form particularly in your artistic
Work.
practice?
Um, no, because I wouldn't say it's intentional not to include it because I feel like the ideas or the kind of messages that I want to put across hasn't reached a point where it has to include something like this.
Yeah.
But this is done in so many different forms, so many. But the moment you see it, you can actually see that this is the
Hmm.
doll that the person is making, yes. Or this idea came from the doll,
Right.
yes. So I might have to, or I have to press or score and press some or model some eyes and nose into it. But because it's wet, I don't want to risk it.
Yeah.
It might fall.
So we'll leave this one blank.
Yes, we'll leave it blank. Okay. I think we are done if you don't have any
Yeah.
questions.
It's beautiful. Just, I mean, anyone can ask any questions if anybody has any. It's amazing how quickly it came together. And I mean, I know that you would normally do this process over a series of hours or days, and it's
Yeah, without a torch or without a dryer or something,
yeah,
you have to make this in different parts. If you want to make it here
right.
on the wheel, make it in different parts. Allow it to be leather hard. If you have to trim, you trim and then put them together. Yes. And if you don't want to do it on the wheel or make it on the wheel,
Yeah.
you just have to sculpt it out of a lump of clay or something. Yes.
Well, thank you for sharing the
You're
history
welcome.
and just the technical aspects behind this piece, and for sharing so much about your practice and your work in the panel. This concludes our live stream.
Yeah.
Thank you, Japteth. And please go see the show, The Medium is the Message, on November 4th premiere at the University of Delaware.